The New York Football Giants go over to London and will be bringing home a big blue victory, 27-22 over the Green Bay Packers. We're going to talk about, man, what feels like maybe an improbable game script. Again, the New York Football Giants have to find a way to stick to what they believe in, to find ways to make adjustments at halftime, and to ultimately pull out a victory that feels like, much like Daniel Jones' injury to his ankle, a miracle to be able to be out there and available and to help lead this team. We're going to break down some of the key facets of this one, all coming up next. Yes, friends. It is OGP, the One Giant Podcast, where, of course, as always, I'm your host, Adam Armbrecht, also covering the Brooklyn Nets over on the Locked On Nets podcast with my boy, Doug Norrie. But today, my friends, is all about the New York Football Giants and what they were able to accomplish here. We come in even a little bit earlier than anticipated on our YouTube Live post-game coverage. We'll obviously be breaking this one down all throughout the week before, as Brian Daboll would tell us, we turn the page and start to focus on those Baltimore Ravens. But this game and Daniel Jones' performance, and if you listen to the pre-show before this matchup, if you listen to Andy and I talk about this one, I called for this to be a potentially career-defining game for Daniel Jones, and I really do think it was exactly that. So much about this week felt exactly as it has for so many other games this year, and the Giants are 4-1, so that's a good thing. This is a team that's depleted by injuries. This is a team that had to find ways to manufacture success, had to rely on the coaching staff to make those adjustments and give them a path to a win. And they did it. They did it on both sides of the ball. Going to be big tips of the cap here to Wink Martindale, who surrendered 20 points with his defensive unit in the first half, shut them out. We all know, end of the game, taking a safety there just to make sure the Giants were in a good spot to get this win. So 20 points in the first half defensively, nothing surrendered in the second half of this game. The Giants come back 17 unanswered points in this game as well to complete that 27-22 victory. We welcome everybody in who's in on the live chat as you start to roll through here. This was an absolutely listen, we've talked about this before. Andy's been critical of me maybe for not being able to be excited enough for this team as they were getting to 3-1. But there's no way to look at the Green Bay Packers, who came into this one 3-1 and who have Aaron Rodgers, who, and we talked about this too coming up to it, is he having the same type of season? Is the wide receiving core the same? Doesn't matter. It's Aaron Rodgers. He has the capabilities of obviously dominating defenses on any given week. So this really did feel like, in so many ways, one of the first opportunities for us to really say, go back to week 1, Tennessee Titans. We can talk about that, right? They've been a strong team over the last couple of seasons, but we know where the Green Bay Packers end up every single year. By the end of it, they're double-digit wins. They go to the playoffs, and whatever happens from there, this is a consistent playoff team with obviously one of the best under centers and then a very dangerous defensive unit on the other side of the ball. I'm going to start with Daniel Jones. We're going to talk about it here at length a little bit. There are key sequences throughout this game just to kind of check a couple boxes here before we talk about Daniel Jones and what I think he was able to accomplish. You get that big one at the end of the first half, the Dexter Lawrence sack. That was a really big play for the New York Giants. You keep the Packers potentially out of field goal range. That makes a difference. You talk about having some of these key sequences where Saquon Barkley gets tackled down, lands on his shoulder awkwardly, comes back into the game to break off a critical run with a little shimmy shake on one defender to make sure you keep drives alive. The Giants had 15 play, right? Consistent, move the ball down the field. And they did it in ways that we haven't necessarily seen. So when we came into this one, as we turn our attention specifically to the play of Daniel Jones, we said all of a sudden he's trending towards being available for this game and going out there and being able to start. And he was able to start and to be effective. And that's a big difference here. But the big question that I had was all through these first handful of games, we can go back to the start of last year and talk about what he was able to do in some of the games that he had. A lot of them came in losses, but good performances from him. This is a game, and what I've said all year, this is why I don't care about who the wide receivers are, because at some point, the better quarterbacks in the league find ways to help their team win games. And outside of that Dallas game, where the offensive line was absolutely atrocious, this coaching staff has found ways to manufacture opportunities for Daniel Jones and this offense to be successful. In this game, we saw a couple of nice draw plays early, designed run plays for Daniel Jones for him to use his legs, but not nearly as much as we've seen the previous 2 weeks, naked bootlegs against Chicago, etc., where you thought, oh man, his legs are going to be a dynamic playmaking element, but he still used them effectively. And that was a big difference in how he approached it. The other thing was, and we can talk about the fact that, hey, guys that sometimes drop passes, guys were making catches today, right? Marcus Johnson gets elevated from the practice squad, steps up, makes key catches. Darius Slayton, we're going to talk about him. But at some point, you had to find ways where Daniel Jones was going to have to stay in the pocket more often than not. He's going to have to find ways to get through his progressions and to hit the open receivers and trust them to make the catches. And I think Daniel Jones has done that throughout the course of this season. But in a game where there was only one, I think, errant throw that he made on a crossing route, about 20, 25 yards down the field, probably, Darius Slayton threw the ball clearly behind him. Other than that play, he made pretty smart, pretty quick, pretty decisive decisions inside of the pocket for the New York Football Giants. So when we go into the stats on this one, and we see 21 of 27, 217 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, just took the one sack for a team in the Green Bay Packers defensively that had 15 coming into this game. Like, they have the ability to get after and put pressure on quarterbacks, and yet Kafka, Daboll, Daniel Jones able to mitigate some of those risks here. For a game, again, at halftime, that was 20-10. The Giants were trailing by 10 in this one. Came out in the third quarter, got that field goal. And I'll say right now, we'll talk about it again later. I was concerned about only taking that field goal there, understanding you want the points, but boy, you give up 20 in the first half, you have real areas of concern. Obviously, Wink Martindale in the defense steps up in a big way, but it was the consistent drives that really helped them. And like I say, to call for this to be a potential career-defining game for Daniel Jones, I do come out of it in a game where Saquon Barkley ran 13 for 70, had a long of 40, and had another significant running play as well. I really thought that Daniel Jones had to do what he did here. Spread the ball around, 6 for 79 for Darius Slayton. Marcus Johnson, 3 for 35. Kind of critical plays. And he, couple balls, and these aren't on Daniel Jones, but a little behind him, make the play. That's what you want. And I was impressed with the way Daniel Jones performed in this one, especially when the ankle it was potentially at least a little bit of a hindrance. Coming in a little bit dinged up, had the hand injury as well. Really liked what I saw from there. Marty, of course, no, we didn't get any Khalil Pimpleton in this one, and that's okay because we ultimately got the win. So I liked the way they performed. A theme of this team has been, and one thing that I did not like the idea of, they used it at different points. Using the 12 personnel, using multiple tight ends, okay. But I thought the big adjustment they made from first half to second half was two things. One, accepting that if we're going to be able to be in this game and have a chance to win this game, we're going to have to use our wide receivers. We're going to have to spread things out a little bit. And the other one was they tried. They tried to set up that screen game in the first half. And the stark contrast between what the Packers were doing early in the screen game versus what the Giants were able to do, it was night and day there, right? I didn't think it was effective. We talk about the offensive line. They struggle at times in pass protection. They also struggle in setting up the screen game. So I didn't like going back to that well. Saquon had some drops in that area, but even when he wasn't dropping them, right, the plays were not going to develop or set up there. So I thought getting away from that in the second half really made a difference here, and getting into more of these sets where a little bit of different looks. A couple of times there where they ended up going back to that wildcat again, put the ball into Saquon Barkley's hands when he goes out of the game with his shoulder injury. It's Gary Brightwell that steps in, talked about it in the post game. That's his little brother. Ecstatic for him to get that first touchdown. He goes right up the gut, and Gary Brightwell has shifted himself into being maybe this little alternate power kind of hammer back for the New York Football Giants, and they manufactured nice opportunities there. The other big play is obviously getting the ball into the hands of Daniel Bellinger, running an option play there where Daboll mentions in the post game, hey, that was an opportunity where, yes, he does have the option to run or pass there. But now multiple times, Kadarius Toney early in the season when he had chances, when they run these looks, it is clear two things. One, that it's not just a gimmick for the sake of the gimmick. There is real opportunities to read the defense and make a decision. More importantly than that is a guy like Daniel Bellinger is being trusted by Brian Daboll and the coaching staff to make the right decision, right? You can talk about it and practice it, but then you put a rookie tight end in that position. He makes the right choice. He makes a decisive choice and gets himself into the end zone there. Big opportunity and big play made by Daniel Bellinger. So a lot of continued trust here inside of this game. We talk about the ladder sequences, right? So the Giants, again, they find a way to have a long, sustained drive. They find a way to take the lead, obviously. And then defensively, again, we talk about Wink Martindale's not just going to be a bring the pressure guy, bring the house guy. He did bring it. But the beauty of it is making sure that you're coaching and letting your players know, yes, you are blitzing, but you need to be aware that Aaron Rodgers, as we highlighted coming into this game, is phenomenal against the blitz. So if you're going to do it and commit to it, it can't just be this downhill attack at the quarterback, reckless abandon. It needs to be a little bit under control. Xavier McKinney, I think he actually ends up getting hit in the helmet on the one play, has a tip pass as well. I think Thibodeau got hit in the face there. Some different, launch angles for Aaron Rodgers, but getting up, being present there, right? Final plays of the game. They get a batted ball down. And then obviously after the Giants take the safety, after they kick it off, and after we get into this potential Hail Mary scenario, it's O'Shane Ximines, one of the guys that has looked so much better as a New York Giant this season under Wink Martindale than he has in years past. Does not afford Aaron Rodgers the opportunity to get off one of those looks. So just so many great sequences here and great individual efforts on a couple of key plays. But everything you hear in the post game, and unlike other times when it feels like lip service for a variety of reasons, in this post game, everyone talked about the consistency of mentality, the belief that you can come back from it, the belief that you can find a way to have success. Additionally, as we're talking about Alzo there in the chat, fourth and fifth cornerbacks out there on the field. You have a knee injury for Adoree Jackson. He goes out. It's down to McLeod. It's down to random anybody that can get out there and make some plays for you. I think we also saw, I want to make sure that I give credit on the deflection here. I don't want to get this one wrong. But McLeod made a couple of plays. One thing that I'll say, too, as we look over at that defensive side of the ball, Julian Love, let's talk about him for a second as we get these stats up. Being able to get out there after clearing concussion protocol and be one of the critical players, 7 total tackles, 1 for a loss, made some of those key plays. When we talk about Aaron Jones, talk about A.J. Dillon, the backfield of the Green Bay Packers, and that being a potential area of concern. Excellent job there. Tony Jefferson, who hadn't played, we know Landon Collins might be waiting in the wings. He has to step in to make some plays as well. Mentioned Xavier McKinney already. And then it was interesting too. As we're rolling through some of these defensive stats here, I thought that it was fascinating to watch. We didn't talk about linebackers a lot in this game. We didn't talk about edge rushers as much in this game. You're trying to control the edge. You're trying to keep this running game of the Green Bay Packers, who at the end of this one, by the way, let's give it the full line here. 13 carries, 63 yards, 11 long for Aaron Jones. These are key components of this. A.J. Dillon, long of 11 yards, 6 for 34. So you end up holding them 20 for 94. For a rushing attack that has been as potent as any in the league this season, the Giants mitigated that and then put it back into the position here. 25 of 39, 222 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions for Aaron Rodgers. Great stat on the postgame, though. 7 of his 14, I believe it was, 6 or 7 of his 14 incompletions were batted balls. They were pass defended by the New York Football Giants. And I'll be honest, It's taking nothing away. But for a quarterback who, as good as we know he is, he had 3, 4, 5 looks down the field where the Giants, listen, we're scraping anybody that we can get off the street to get out there. It really was a scenario where I thought Aaron Rodgers was not hitting his mark as often as he should have been. And then you get some great sequences where defensive players for the Giants managed to get their head around. I thought it was an absolutely atrocious call against Xavier McKinney defending against Tunyon, where they get down inside the 5-yard line there on that pass interference. They're hand checking a little bit. And ultimately, I thought Tunyon did way more to interfere with Xavier McKinney. Regardless, they say that looking back at the ball or not, I don't think that there was an interference call to be made there, shy of it being offensive. Nevertheless, they overcome that. Right? They overcome that. There's a couple of plays here that could have been difficult ones for the Giants to overcome. Instead, they get there. The near fumble that could have been gets knocked out of bounds for the Giants, right? So some of these breaks have just gone the Giants' way this season. This game, though, I'm going to come back to square one here. Daniel Jones showed that incrementally. Another thing mentioned here on the Giants post-game broadcast, talking with Brian Daboll. The Giants, I think, this new coaching staff came in to this season saying, we don't know. We know what has not been good for this team across the board, but we don't know what we have in Daniel Jones. And I'm not going to tell you right now that I am now flipping the script and saying 100% Daniel Jones is the franchise quarterback. But what I do think is occurring is that incrementally Daniel Jones is rewarding or almost demanding that a little bit more confidence get put in him, a little bit more responsibility, right? You go back to that Dallas game, offensive line to a man across the board, all came out and said, that's our fault. We didn't give Aid enough opportunities. We had to take that one. And we looked at that game and said, good Lord, just from a physical standpoint, you took the beating and you came back to it. That matters in this one too. Daniel Jones had an ankle injury that seemed like could have kept him out, if not for one, maybe multiple games. He finds a way to get himself back on the field. For a guy that has had injuries, follow him around a little bit. That really mattered. And I think that relationship is starting to grow a little bit. The question now becomes whether or not these little incremental movements can start to be a bit of a groundswell here for Daniel Jones. That as we start to work towards the midpoint of this season, we can see some other opportunities start to come. You didn't get Wan'Dale Robinson back in this particular game. We don't know what's going to happen with Kadarius Toney. And that's why I keep coming back to, it's up to you to make the plays and for the guys around you to be available and make the plays when they come to him as well. David Sills had a nice one for himself there down near the goal line. Just be sure-handed, get those little incremental chunk yards. And Darius Slayton in this one rewarded Daniel Jones. And the last piece I'll mention, 26 yards for Darius Slayton as his long, 79 yards total, 6 catches on 7 targets. And it wasn't. Coming into the game, I said, hey, listen, we've seen it before, and he got a couple penalties drawn on him throughout this one as well. But you got to look at it and say, Darius Slayton showed something that we have a hard time thinking about him with. A guy that can run underneath routes, a guy that can run crossing routes, a guy that can run to the sticks and get you first downs. He had to, shockingly, he had to do that in this game and be successful at it in order for the Giants to have some level of consistency. Daniel Jones said in the postgame on this one, that's a guy that I've had a lot of time with, had a lot of reps with, and have a lot of confidence in. Now, this new coaching staff, right, they're going to keep coming back to this process that they want to work through, as Daboll will tell you in the postgame, right? We trust the process. We turn the page. We try to get ourselves in good positions. Nothing changes here for Brian Daboll and the coaching staff. But what may change for them in terms of who they can value and plug in, well, Darius Slayton had a good day for himself. He had a great day for himself, right? Going all the way back to his rookie season when we really felt excited about him. I think that was a monster performance from him. And in a lot of ways, we can say last week, right, some other looks, but the 2 looks he gets, there's an interception from Tyrod, but then more importantly, there's the one that draws the pass interference play. That can be something that he builds on. That was a kind of back against the wall a little bit moment, I think, for Darius Slayton about whether or not, if and when this wide receiver group starts to get healthy again, can you still have a role? And then we can make the case that for what David Sills is not, Darius Slayton is deserving of getting himself back into that rotation and back into that conversation. The other thing that I also really liked on this, and we're going to talk about all these things throughout this week here, at least up until Wednesday. Then we'll start to turn the page to those Baltimore Ravens. But the other thing that I really liked here, again, whether it was through injury to Saquon when he had to come out for a little bit, but I thought, again, working a little bit more Breida. Go back, that big run off the left side. Breida was in the backfield for that one. He got to the second level. He set a key block. He gave Saquon Barkley an opportunity to make a man miss and put a big chunk play down on paper. We'll talk about the reps counts here as we get into the week. But that backfield, 13 for 70 and the touchdown for Saquon Barkley. Daniel Jones, 10 for 37. Not those dynamic big chunk plays we've seen the last couple of games, but still important ones. Mentioned at the top, the draw plays, right? Matt Breida, it's 4 for 14. It's not blowing your skirt up. But those plays count, right? 2 for 5 for Brightwell and the touchdown. Put your nose in and make it happen in that moment when it matters and use the strength of this offensive line. Punch that ball in there, put up 14 points in the fourth quarter here. Again, effectively shut out the Green Bay Packers in the second half of this game. And the 27 points, by the way, I'm going to look this up in real time here. The New York Football Giants obviously have not put up 27 points this season. But let's go ahead and dial it back here. Go back to 2021. The last time that this team gave you a 27-point performance, we've got to go all the way back to 27-21 in overtime against the New Orleans Saints in week 4 of last year. That's the last time that this team has put up 27 points on offense. And by the way, it took overtime to get there. Outside of that one, all of last season, we know what the back end of that season looked like, but 29 points in week 2 against the Washington Commanders, losing that game 30-29, right? They have not been a team that has been able to put up points like that and put up points when it matters. Put up points when a game could be getting away from you. And a lot of the guys spoke about this too. Saquon Barkley said it. We also saw Daniel Jones mention it. We saw Darius Slayton. We heard Dexter Lawrence, who had another nice game for himself, talked a lot about, hey, it's up to me to hold things down while Leonard Williams is out. And then when he comes back, it makes them that much stronger. But there's a different level of belief. Saquon specifically mentioned, a lot of times we've been in a lot of games like this the last few years, and I've been injured, etc. But where we come out on the wrong side of it. Here, we're coming out on the right side of it, and it starts with that preparation and being in really good spots to give yourself an opportunity to go out there and win a game. I really, this will be for me personally, and I don't dismiss anyone saying they were already 3-1 coming into this game. They were already having a good year. This is the first one that really gets me excited in terms of what maybe is possible for this season for the Giants. Because we say we don't look ahead on the schedule hardly ever on the podcast. But when you thought about playing Green Bay in London, then playing Baltimore, then having the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have been a much stronger team this year than at least maybe people thought coming in, and then you get Seattle. Again, another team that's performed a little bit better. That next 4-game chunk, boy, does it look tricky. Even at 3-1, you go, could we go 1-3 and be 500? Which would be fine. I'd still be talking about a lot of the positives. This one here is now when I think you can start to look at that next meeting, maybe with Dallas, or those 2 games against the Commanders and how you want to be able to call those wins. That's the difference, I think, here for me when we're looking at this team and whether or not we think that. I think playoff percentages were something like 30, 33%. Now it's going to drastically change here when we look out across the landscape of the NFL. So really big difference here. Obviously, 3 more games to go before that bye week. And then we get into that back half of the season, 9 games that they'll play, obviously, at home coming out of the bye week as well, which is pretty nice. Got to go across the country to play Seattle in week number 8. But then you come home. Then you get a full bye week, and then you'll have Houston and Detroit at home before you hit on the road. 4 out of your first 5 games out of the bye week are going to be at home. That makes a big difference. The opportunity to get healthy is what makes a big difference to how the second half of this season can unfold for them. There is plenty more to talk about in this game. I thought Jalen Smith looks different now, has those long locks, reminds me of Gary Brightwell going back to last season in a lot of ways. If you've ever seen Gary Brightwell's rookie photo, has those beautiful long locks on display. He had a nice game for himself. I think Ward continues to be someone that can be relied upon defensively there. Piece it together. Piece it together any way that you need to. And the one thing we can talk about too here, Giants trailed by 10 points at halftime in this one. In the Chicago game, this was one where they were up actually in that one, 14-9 going into the break there. So they had one game where they were up at halftime there. But by and large, when we're looking at these schedules, we know they lost the game against Dallas. But Carolina, that's a game again. You go into halftime 6-6, and then you come out and you find a way to manufacture a win in the second half of that ball game. We know as well for the Tennessee Titans game, you were sitting there down 13-0, right? So there's going to be those parallels that get drawn here, being down big at halftime and finding a way to get a win. Really, absolutely fantastic game overall for this team. We'll talk more about how they managed to have success stopping the run. I got to be honest with you. In the same way that we talk about the New York Football Giants and what they've been able to accomplish from a coaching standpoint, putting guys in good position, giving guys opportunities to step up and make plays when it matters most. I am pretty shocked that the Green Bay Packers, coming into a game where they've been so successful on the ground, 19 total carries for the backfield, 13 rushes for Aaron Jones. It's impressive what the Giants have been able to accomplish, and sometimes compliments to Wink Martindale, compliments to Brian Daboll, to Mike Kafka. But boy, do I get shocked when I see stat lines like that. I get shocked when I see that the Giants have struggled to stop the run, and the Green Bay Packers go out and have Aaron Rodgers throw the ball 39 times in a game that they were leading. Like, that's the big difference too. The Packers were leading this game in the fourth quarter, and yet they chose to get away from something. Whether it's the Packers or otherwise, there has to be an understanding between arrogance and confidence. And I think that sometimes, to the Giants' benefit, teams are arrogant about what they think they're going to be able to accomplish. And now, 4 out of 5 times, those teams are coming to realize you cannot be arrogant against this New York Giants team or against this New York Giants defense. Gave up 20 points. First half, we were talking, hey, man, this could be a real stain on Wink Martindale and this defensive unit, depending on how things go. But it doesn't go that way. They get it turned around. They get it cleaned up, and they find ways to shut down Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. But sometimes, man, it just feels like teams are willing to play into the Giants' hand, and I'm not balking at it. I'm picking it up every single time. And one of the things that we're not going to talk about a lot, I'm sure Andy will bring this up during the week, are the Giants the worst 4-1 team in NFL history? God, I hope so. I hope we're the most disgusting, despicable, embarrassing 4-1 team you've ever seen. Why? Because you don't get any of them back. And it doesn't matter when we get at the end of the season, and if the Giants are pushing for the playoffs, it's not going to matter how you won those games early on. And a lot of these things, a lot of these wins and the way that they've been able to do it, that's going to matter because you'd like to think, fingers crossed, that this team is going to get healthier along the way here. That's why I talk so much about 3 weeks from now, big bye week, big opportunity for a lot of guys to get healthy. Hopefully some guys will already be coming back at that point, but a lot of opportunities to get reinforced. Second half of this season, having someone like Leonard Williams fully back and healthy, that's going to matter. Having at least Wan'Dale Robinson back is going to matter. Maybe Kadarius Toney, who knows? All of those pieces are going to matter. There's a lot of other names on that list that we can talk about as well. I am elated. 27-22, New York Football Giants get the job done. And that last footnote about taking that safety there, we know it's a smart play. It's the heads-up play. That's a coaching decision. And those things continue on a week-to-week basis to stand out for this staff. They consistently are making adjustments in the game. They're making the smart calls in the game. And unlike other seasons, when this defense or the offense when they've struggled, when they haven't had it going early, when they've needed to make an adjustment, there's no sense of, am I in the right place? And listen, they're gonna get passes, they're gonna make first downs. There's going to be opportunities like that for the opposition. But everyone just seems to keep grinding at it, and understanding results help get you there, right? Why are we willing to stay focused and serve our role for this defense or offense? Because we were 3-1 coming in and now we're 4-1. More often than not, you're getting rewarded by staying the course because you are getting ultimately victories for this team. You're gosh darn right. Yeah, friends keep losing bets because they keep going against Big Blue. We're seeing there in the chat. Yeah, man. Listen, I made a couple bucks myself taking the Giants straight up in this one. When we did our predictions, I called 19-16, even a little bit more explosive than we anticipated. Giants, and we'll talk about this too, got touchdowns, right? Converted red zone opportunities for 6 points, not taking field goals. That makes a big difference as well in this one, and why I was just a little anxious when they took that field goal to get to 13, right? 2 out of your first 3 scores are field goals, but then you go ahead and you flip that script and you put 2 more touchdowns on the board as the second half unfolds in this one to give yourself a victory. Come home 4-1. Got to get healthy. More injuries for this team, excuse me, as only the Giants could have. We'll talk about those as we get through the week here. We'll highlight some more post-game takeaways from the players and then drill down on some of these numbers. Who really had a successful game? Where did Daniel Jones have a lot of success in this one in the passing attack? And what does it maybe potentially open up for the New York Football Giants in terms of this offense and where they think they can go from here? Have they found a little something in Marcus Johnson, calling him in off the street to the practice squad to the 53-man roster? Maybe. And I'll go ahead and close it out here on this note because we don't know when these are going to come up, but we did get it here. Daniel Jones, and this is where I will contrast it with what happened last week. Daniel Jones and the New York Giants beat Chicago last week 20-12. After that game, understanding that Jones got hurt, 8 of 13, 71 yards, completed 61.5 of his passes, but ran the ball 6 times for 68 yards and had those 2 scores. The rating for Daniel Jones in that game was 76.1, and the QBR was a career best 92.3. However, the 75.4 QBR that he had in this game today is far greater than what he accomplished the week prior because he did it with his arms when it mattered most. He was still able to use those legs, 10 for 37, get a key first down here and there, make it from a second and 10 to a third and reasonable. That still mattered, but he got the job done from the pocket. And that's the answer. The question that we have, or that I at least have with him, show me you can do it when it matters most from the pocket. He did that far more often in this game than not. Completed 21 of 27 passes for 77, almost 78% completion percentage. This is unlike even a 17 for 21 in week 1, though strikingly similar here when we talk about it, these 2 games. And again, 6 rushes for 25 in week 1, right? So it's not the big runs that he's getting, but it's maybe important runs that he's getting. Balanced performance from Daniel Jones, critical performance from Daniel Jones, and arguably a critical win for him and for the Giants as they improve to 4-1. And we all start to watch the divisional games for the NFC East and where the Giants are going to fall in that hierarchy. We will be back, my friends, talking about this game, talking about the takeaways, and then, getting into those injury updates and seeing who's going to be available for us as we have another difficult task. Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens just around the corner. We'll try our best to stay with Daboll on this one and turn the page and start to focus on to the next game. In the meantime, guys, hope you enjoyed the live post-game coverage here. Absolutely elated to see this one turn out the way that it did. You can get us over on YouTube where we are running our show live 5 mornings a week. Get in on that action. If you missed the live, catch it on the replay, catch it on the podcast. Do us a favor, man. Go subscribe to that podcast. Even if you're enjoying us primarily on YouTube, it helps move the needle on the numbers for us, and that helps us take the next big step forward with this show and what we want to do, continue to bring you guys the best possible content that we can when it comes to the New York Football Giants. Always greatly appreciated. Over 1,700 subscribers on YouTube. We appreciate and love every single person that's a part of that. Everyone that came in on the live chat today. Woo! 27-22. New York Football Giants are 4-1 for the first time in 13 years. Good Lord. It feels good to be on the winning side of things more often than not. We'll be back in next time talking all things New York Football Giants. And until then, as Andy Makowitz would want, need, and shout out happy birthday to Rory, demand the people know, as always, let's go Big Blue.